The ship floated in the dark space like a broken toy. Commander Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars through the cracked window. Her hands shook as she held onto the metal rail. The ship called Meridian had been drifting for 3 weeks now, and things were getting worse every day. The attack had come from nowhere. The Vorthan raiders had hit them hard and fast, just like wolves hunting a wounded deer. Their weapons had torn through the ship's hull and destroyed the main engine. Now they were stuck in empty space with no way to get home. Ben Carter crawled out from under a broken control panel. His face was dirty and tired. He wiped his hands on his shirt and looked at the commander. "The big engine is completely broken," he said. "We're using the backup power, but it won't last much longer. Maybe 1 more week if we're lucky." Lisa felt her heart sink. 1 week was not enough time. They were too far from home, and no one knew where they were. The Galactic Coalition was supposed to send patrol ships to this area, but they had never come. Maybe they thought the Meridian was already destroyed. Katie Moore sat at her communication station, pressing buttons and turning dials. She had been trying to send messages for weeks, but no one answered. Her eyes were red from crying and lack of sleep. "Still nothing," she said quietly. "I keep sending our emergency signal, but no one responds. I think they've given up on us." Dr. Alan Brooks moved between the injured crew members in the medical area. 20 people had been hurt in the attack, and their medical supplies were almost gone. He had been working day and night to keep everyone alive, but it was getting harder. The ship had 40 people on board when they started their mission. They were exploring new planets and looking for signs of life. It was supposed to be a safe mission in a quiet part of space. But the Vorthan raiders had been waiting for them. Lisa remembered the day of the attack. They had been studying a small planet when the raiders appeared on their screens. 3 ships, moving fast and silent. Before anyone could react to the energy, weapons had hit them. The lights went out and people screamed as the ship shook like it was being torn apart. Now, they were paying the price for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Coalition had rules about lost ships. If a vessel went missing for 30 days without contact, they would stop looking for it. The Meridian had been missing for 21 days already. "Commander," Ben said, standing up slowly, "we need to talk about the life support system. The air recyclers are working, but they're using a lot of power. If we want to make the backup energy last longer, we need to reduce the life support to minimum levels." Lisa knew what that meant. The ship would get colder and the air would become thinner. People would get tired more easily, and some of the sick crew members might not survive. But if they didn't do it, everyone would die when the power ran out. "How much longer would that give us?" she asked. "Maybe another week," Ben replied. "But that's if nothing else breaks down." Katie looked up from her station. "Commander, I've been thinking. What if we try broadcasting on the old emergency channels? The ones that haven't been used in years. Maybe someone out there is still listening." Dr. Brooks shook his head. "The old channels don't have much range. And who would be listening to them anyway? Most ships use the new Coalition frequencies." But Lisa was desperate. They had tried everything else and nothing had worked. "Do it," she told Katie. "Try every channel you can find. Someone might hear us." The next few hours were the longest of Lisa's life. She watched her crew work with the last of their energy, trying to fix systems that were beyond repair. Some of the younger crew members had started to cry. Others just sat quietly, staring at the walls. The ship's computer kept giving them bad news. The hull had small cracks that were getting bigger. The water recycling system was failing. The food supplies would last only a few more days. Everything was falling apart. Lisa walked through the ship, talking to her crew and trying to keep their spirits up. But inside, she felt like giving up. They were so far from home, and space was so big. The chances of someone finding them were almost zero. As night fell on the ship, she made the hard decision to reduce life support. The lights became dimmer, and the air became cooler. People put on extra clothes and hugged each other to stay warm. The ship felt like a tomb floating in the endless darkness. But Katie kept working at her communication station, sending messages on every channel she could find. She sent their location, their situation, and their desperate need for help. The signals went out into the void, carrying their last hope with them. On the 27th day, something incredible happened. Katie's equipment suddenly came alive with an incoming message. The sound was weak and filled with static, but it was definitely a human voice. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the independent freighter Starbound," the voice said. "We're receiving your distress signal. We're coming to help you. Please respond if you can hear this." Katie's hands trembled as she reached for the microphone. After weeks of silence, someone had finally answered. Someone was coming to save them. The impossible had happened, and hope was alive again on the dying ship. Katie Moore could not believe what she was hearing. After weeks of sending messages into empty space, someone had finally answered. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. She looked around the bridge and saw that everyone was staring at her. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Someone answered us." Commander Lisa Hayes rushed to the communication station. Her hands were shaking as she took the microphone from Katie. "Starbound, this is Commander Lisa Hayes of the Coalition vessel. Meridian, we are badly damaged and stranded. How did you find us?" The voice came back through the crackling static. "Commander Hayes, we picked up your distress signal while we were traveling to the mining colonies. We changed our route to come help you. We're not a big ship, but we have supplies and a working engine." Lisa felt tears in her eyes. After almost 4 weeks of being alone in the dark, help was finally coming, but she had many questions. "Starbound, what kind of ship are you? Are you with the Coalition?" "Negative, Commander. We're an independent trading ship. We carry supplies to the outer colonies and mining stations. We don't work for the Coalition, but we help people when they need it." Ben Carter looked confused. "An independent ship? Out here? That's very dangerous. The Vorthan raiders control this area." Dr. Brooks nodded. "Independent traders usually stay close to safe space. They don't come to places like this." But the voice on the radio continued. "We know it's dangerous, but we couldn't ignore your call for help. We're about 18 hours away from your position. Can you hold on until we get there?" Lisa grabbed the microphone again. "Yes, we can wait. But you need to know that the Vorthan raiders are still in this area. They attacked us 3 weeks ago, and they might come back. We understand the risk, Commander, but we're not going to leave you out there. We'll be careful." The communication ended, and the bridge fell silent. Everyone was looking at each other with amazement. Katie checked her equipment again to make sure she had not imagined the whole thing. "They're really coming," she said quietly. "Someone is actually coming to save us, but not everyone was happy about the news. Some crew members were worried about the strangers." "How do we know we can trust them?" asked one of the engineers. "They could be pirates or raiders themselves." Lisa thought about this. It was true that they knew nothing about the Starbound or its crew, but they were desperate and they had no other choice. "We have to trust them," she said. "There are only hope." The next 18 hours felt like the longest day of their lives. The crew tried to prepare for the rescue. They gathered their most important belongings and made lists of injured people who would need medical help. Dr. Brooks worked to stabilize the patients who were in bad condition. Ben Carter tried to fix some of the ship's systems, but it was hopeless. The Meridian was dying, and there was nothing he could do to save it. "We'll have to abandon ship," he told Lisa. "There's no way to repair the damage." As the hours passed, Katie kept checking her sensors for any sign of the rescue ship. She also watched for Vorthan raiders, knowing that they could appear at any time. The space around them was quiet, but that could change quickly. Finally, after what felt like forever, a small dot appeared on the sensor screen. It was moving toward them slowly and carefully. "I've got them," Katie announced. "The Starbound is on approach." Lisa felt her heart racing again. After weeks of hopelessness, salvation was finally arriving. But she was also nervous about meeting these strangers who had risked their lives to help them. The Starbound was smaller than Lisa had expected. It looked like a cargo ship, built for carrying supplies rather than fighting. Its hull was scratched and dented from years of hard use, but it was clearly well maintained. Most importantly, it was moving under its own power. Starbound, this is Commander Hayes. We can see you on our sensors. Thank you for coming. You're welcome, Commander. We're going to dock with your ship using magnetic clamps. Our captain wants to come aboard and assess the situation. As the Starbound got closer, Lisa could see that it was not a military vessel. It had no weapons that she could see, and it looked like any other trading ship. But it was the most beautiful sight she had ever seen. The docking process took almost an hour. The Starbound had to be very careful because the Meridian was badly damaged. One wrong move could tear both ships apart. But the crew of the rescue ship was skilled, and they managed to connect the two vessels safely. "Docking complete," came the voice from the Starbound. "We're ready to come aboard." Lisa gathered her senior officers and waited at the airlock. She had no idea what to expect from these mysterious rescuers. Were they professional traders? Former military? Space pirates with good hearts? The airlock opened and a man in his 50s stepped through. He was wearing simple work clothes and had kind eyes. Behind him came a woman and two other men, all carrying equipment and supplies. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison," the man said, extending his hand. "Sorry it took us so long to get here. We came as fast as we could." Lisa shook his hand and felt a wave of relief wash over her. These people had traveled through dangerous space to help complete strangers. They had risked their lives and their ship for people they had never met. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved our lives." Captain Morrison smiled. "That's what people do for each other out here. Now let's see what we can do to get you folks home safely." Captain Jake Morrison stepped onto the bridge of the Meridian and looked around. The damage was worse than he had expected. Broken panels hung from the ceiling and the lights flickered on and off. The air smelled like burned metal and fear. "How many people do you have on board?" he asked Commander Hayes. 40 total, she replied. 20 are injured and some are in bad shape. We've been running on emergency power for 3 weeks. Morrison nodded and turned to his crew. "Maria, work with their engineer to see what we can save. Paul, check on the injured people. Rick, help me figure out how to get everyone off this ship." The woman Morrison had called Maria stepped forward. She was tall and strong, with short black hair and steady hands. "I'm Maria Santos," she said to Ben Carter. "I used to work for the Coalition before I joined Jake's crew. Show me what we're dealing with." Ben led her to the engine room while Morrison's medical officer Paul Young went with Dr. Brooks to look at the wounded crew members. The fourth member of Morrison's team, Rick Davis, started checking the ship's structure. "Captain," Rick said, after a few minutes, "this ship won't last much longer. The hull has cracks that are getting bigger. We need to get everyone off soon." Morrison looked at Commander Hayes. "We can't tow your ship. The Starbound isn't big enough, and your vessel is too damaged. But we can take all your people and whatever supplies you need." Hayes felt her heart sink. The Meridian had been her home for 3 years. She had commanded this ship through dangerous missions and peaceful explorations. Now she would have to watch it die in empty space. "How much can we carry?" she asked. "Not much," Morrison admitted. "We'll have to make room in our cargo hold for your people. Everyone can bring 1 bag of personal items. The rest will have to stay here." The next few hours were chaos. Morrison's crew worked alongside the Meridian's people to prepare for the evacuation. They moved medical supplies, food, and water to the Starbound. The injured crew members were carefully transported first, with Paul Young and Dr. Brooks working together to keep them stable. Maria Santos and Ben Carter managed to salvage some of the Meridian's computer data and navigation equipment. "This information could be valuable," Maria said. "Your exploration data might help other ships avoid the same fate." But their work was interrupted when Rick Davis came running onto the bridge. "Captain, we have a problem." "I'm reading 3 ships on long-range sensors. They're moving fast and heading straight for us." Morrison's face went dark. "Vorthan raiders." They must have been monitoring our communications. They know we're here. Katie Moore checked her sensors and confirmed Rick's report. 3 ships, definitely Vorthan design. They'll be here in less than an hour. The Vorthan raiders were known throughout this part of space for their cruelty. They attacked ships, stole everything valuable, and killed anyone who got in their way. If they found the Starbound and Meridian connected, they would destroy both vessels. We need to leave now, Morrison said. Everyone who's coming with us needs to get aboard the Starbound immediately. The evacuation became a race against time. People grabbed their belongings and ran through the connecting tube between the ships. The injured crew members were moved as quickly as possible, with some of them crying out in pain. Commander Hayes stood on the bridge, watching her crew abandon the ship that had been their home. Some of the younger crew members were crying as they left their quarters for the last time. Others looked angry, frustrated that they had to run from the raiders. "Commander," Ben Carter said, "I've set the computer to overload if anyone tries to board the ship. It won't stop the raiders, but it might slow them down." Hayes nodded. It was a small comfort to know that the Vorthan raiders wouldn't be able to steal everything from the Meridian. But it still hurt to know that her ship would be destroyed. As the last crew members crossed to the Starbound, Morrison came to find Hayes. "Commander, we need to go. The raiders will be here soon." Hayes took one last look around the bridge. She had made important decisions in this room, led her crew through dangerous situations, and shared moments of discovery when they found new worlds. Now it was time to say goodbye. "I'm ready," she said, but her voice was shaking. Morrison put a hand on her shoulder. "I know it's hard to leave your ship, but your crew needs you alive more than they need the Meridian." They hurried through the connecting tube to the Starbound. As soon as they were aboard, Morrison's crew began disconnecting the 2 ships. The process took precious minutes, and everyone could feel the tension building. "Raiders will be here in 20 minutes, Rick reported. "How long until we can jump to hyperspace?" Morrison asked. 5 minutes to power up the drive, Maria answered from the engine room. The Starbound pulled away from the Meridian, just as the first Vorthan ship appeared on their sensors. The raiders opened fire immediately, their energy weapons striking the abandoned Coalition vessel. "They're not shooting at us yet," Katie observed. "They want to see what we're doing." But that changed quickly. As the Starbound's engines began to glow with hyperspace energy, the raiders realized that their prey was escaping. All 3 ships turned toward the rescue vessel and began firing. "Shields up," Morrison ordered. "All power to the engines." The Starbound shook as enemy fire hit their protective shields. Morrison's ship was fast, but it wasn't built for fighting. They had to escape before the raiders could disable their engines. "Hyperdrive ready," Maria announced. "Jump now," Morrison commanded. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Starbound entered hyperspace. Behind them, the Meridian exploded in a brilliant flash as the Vorthan raiders continued their attack on the empty ship. Hayes watched through a window as her former command disappeared forever. But around her, 40 people were alive because strangers had risked their lives to save them. The Meridian was gone, but her crew would live to see another day. The cargo hold of the Starbound was packed with people. 40 crew members from the Meridian sat on boxes, crates, and makeshift beds. The space was meant for carrying supplies, not people, but Morrison's crew had worked hard to make it comfortable. Maria Santos had organized sleeping areas using cargo nets and spare blankets. She moved between the rescued crew members like a caring mother, making sure everyone had water and food. "I know it's crowded," she told them, "but we'll be home in 3 days." Dr. Brooks and Paul Young worked together in the small medical bay. The injured crew members were slowly getting better thanks to the fresh medical supplies from the Starbound. Paul had brought pain medicine and healing equipment that Dr. Brooks had not seen in weeks. "Your ship has better medical supplies than most Coalition vessels," Dr. Brooks said with amazement. Paul smiled. "When you're operating far from civilization, you learn to carry everything you might need. We've had to treat everything from broken bones to space fever." Commander Hayes found herself talking with Captain Morrison in the ship's small dining area. The room could only hold 8 people, but Morrison had given up his private quarters to house some of the injured crew members. "Why did you become an independent trader?" Hayes asked Morrison as they shared a simple meal. Morrison looked out the small window at the stars rushing past. "I used to work for a big shipping company. They had rules for everything, even when those rules didn't make sense. One day they told me not to help a colony that was running out of food because it wasn't profitable. I quit the next day." "That must have been a difficult decision," Hayes said. "It was the best decision I ever made," Morrison replied. "Now I help people who really need it. My crew chose this life because they believe in doing what's right, not just what's easy." Hayes learned more about Morrison's crew over the next few days. Maria Santos had been a coalition engineer for 10 years before she got tired of the bureaucracy. She had joined Morrison's crew because she wanted to use her skills to help people directly. Rick Davis had grown up on a mining colony where big corporations took advantage of poor families. He became a trader so he could bring fair prices and honest deals to the outer colonies. Paul Young had been a military medic who left the service because he wanted to heal people instead of preparing them for war. "We're not heroes," Morrison told Hayes. "We're just people who decided to make our own way in the galaxy. When we see someone in trouble, we help them. It's that simple." But Hayes could see that it wasn't simple at all. These people had given up the safety and comfort of working for big organizations. They risked their lives every day, traveling through dangerous space to help colonies and settlements that others had forgotten. On the second day of their journey, Katie Moore approached Morrison with a question. "Captain, I've been monitoring coalition frequencies. They're talking about our rescue. It's becoming big news." Morrison looked uncomfortable. "What kind of news?" "The good kind," Katie said. "People are calling you heroes. They're saying that an independent crew did what the coalition couldn't do." This made Morrison even more uncomfortable. "We don't want to be famous. We just want to help people and make an honest living." But the news was spreading quickly through human space. The story of the Starbound's rescue was being told on every communication channel. People were amazed that a small independent ship had succeeded where the Coalition's formal rescue system had failed. Ben Carter had been studying the Starbound's engine systems with Maria's help. "This ship is remarkable," he told Hayes. "It's not the newest or the fastest, but every system is perfectly maintained. They've modified the engines to be more efficient and the shields to be stronger. We have to take care of our equipment," Maria explained. "We can't call for help if something breaks. Everything on this ship has to work perfectly or we could end up stranded like you were." The rescued crew members were impressed by how well Morrison's people worked together. Despite being from different backgrounds and worlds, they operated like a family. They shared responsibilities, helped each other with problems, and made decisions together. Dr. Brooks was particularly fascinated by their medical setup. "You have equipment here that I've never seen before," he told Paul. "Some of this looks like it was made by different alien species." "We trade with everyone," Paul explained. "Humans, aliens, colonies, corporations. We've learned that good ideas can come from anywhere. This healing scanner came from a Zentari merchant. That bone repair device was made by human engineers on a frontier world." As they approached Coalition space, Commander Hayes realized how much she had learned from these strangers. They had shown her that there were different ways to live and work in the galaxy. They had chosen freedom over security, and they had used that freedom to help others. "What will you do now?" Morrison asked Hayes as they prepared to dock at the Coalition station. "I don't know," Hayes admitted. "The Meridian was my home for 3 years. Now I'll have to start over." Morrison nodded. "Starting over can be scary, but it can also be the beginning of something better. If you ever get tired of Coalition rules and regulations, you know where to find us." Hayes smiled. She had never considered leaving the Coalition before, but now she understood why people like Morrison chose independence. Sometimes the best way to help people was to be free, to make your own choices. As the Starbound approached the docking station, Hayes looked back at the crew that had saved her life. They were not soldiers or officials. They were just people who had decided to be good to each other. In a galaxy full of rules and regulations, they had chosen to follow their hearts instead. The Starbound docked at Proxima Station with news reporters already waiting. Word of the rescue had spread across human space faster than anyone expected. Camera crews and journalists crowded the docking bay, all wanting to interview the heroes who had saved the Meridian's crew. Commander Hayes stepped off the ship first, followed by her 40 crew members. They looked tired and worn, but they were alive and grateful. Behind them came Captain Morrison and his small crew, looking uncomfortable. With all the attention. "Commander Hayes," shouted one reporter, "how does it feel to be rescued by an independent trader?" Hayes looked back at Morrison before answering. "It feels like being saved by good people who did the right thing when it mattered most." "Admiral." Patricia Wells was waiting for them at the station command center. She was a stern woman in her 60s who had commanded this sector for many years. She welcomed Hayes and her crew warmly, but her expression was serious when she looked at Morrison. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I want to thank you for saving these people. However, I need to ask some questions about your presence in that sector." Morrison stood straight and looked the Admiral in the eye. "We were carrying supplies to the mining colonies in the Tau Ceti system. We heard the distress call and decided to help. That's all there is to it. But that sector is considered dangerous," the Admiral said. "Coalition ships only go there with full military escort. How did a single independent trader manage to succeed where our rescue protocols failed?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the room knew what she was really asking. How had Morrison's small crew accomplished what the Coalition's huge organization could not? "Maybe," Morrison said quietly, "it's because we didn't wait for permission to do what was right." The Admiral's face went red, but before she could respond, Commander Hayes stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, Captain Morrison and his crew risked their lives to save us. They deserve our gratitude, not our suspicion." Over the next few days, the story of the rescue became the biggest news in human space. People on dozens of worlds were talking about the small independent ship that had answered a call for help when the official rescue system had failed. The political effects were immediate and significant. Coalition officials found themselves answering difficult questions about their rescue procedures. Why had it taken an independent trader to save the Meridian's crew? Why were Coalition patrol ships not operating in that sector? Why had the bureaucracy moved so slowly while people were dying? Morrison tried to avoid the media attention, but reporters followed him everywhere. They wanted to know about his crew, his ship, and his reasons for risking everything to help strangers. "We're not heroes," he kept saying. "We just did what anyone should do when they see people in trouble." But the public saw it differently. Morrison and his crew had become symbols of human compassion and courage. Their story inspired other independent traders to take risks to help people in need. Dr. Brooks spoke at a medical conference about the rescue. "These people showed us that sometimes the best medicine is simply caring about others. Their willingness to help save not just our lives, but our faith in humanity." Ben Carter found himself comparing Coalition engineering to the Starbound systems. "They've taken standard equipment and made it better through experience and necessity. There's something to be learned from people who have to make everything work perfectly because their lives depend on it." The Coalition was forced to change some of its policies because of the rescue. They increased patrols in dangerous sectors and simplified their emergency response procedures. They also began working more closely with independent traders who operated in remote areas, but the biggest change was in how people thought about helping others. The story of the Starbound showed that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences in the lives of others. It didn't take military training or official authority to be a hero. It just took the willingness to act when action was needed. Admiral Wells called Morrison to her office before he left the station. "Captain, I want to offer you and your crew positions in the Coalition fleet. We could use people with your skills and your commitment to helping others." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral, but we're going to stay independent. We can help more people this way." "I thought you might say that," the Admiral replied. "But the offer stands if you ever change your mind." As the Starbound prepared to leave Proxima Station, Commander Hayes came to say goodbye. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved our lives and showed us something important about what it means to be human." Morrison shook her hand. "You would have done the same thing for us. That's what people do for each other." "What's next for you?" Hayes asked. "We have supplies to deliver to the Tau Ceti colonies," Morrison said. "After that, we'll see where the galaxy takes us. There are always people who need help somewhere." Hayes watched as the Starbound undocked and headed back into space. The small ship looked insignificant against the backdrop of stars, but she knew it carried something precious. It carried the proof that in a vast and often hostile universe, there were still people willing to risk everything to help others. The story of the rescue continued to spread throughout human space for months and years afterward. It became a legend that inspired countless acts of kindness and courage. Children learned about Captain Morrison and his crew in school. Spacers told the story in bars and cafes across the galaxy, but perhaps the most important effect was on the people who heard it. The rescue of the Meridian proved that being human meant more than just surviving in space. It meant reaching out to help others even when it was dangerous or difficult. In the end, the greatest strength of humanity was not their technology or their military might. It was their willingness to answer when someone called for help in the darkness.